Hi there, my name is Alan Lamont. These videos are going to be about the Knights Templar, and because they are the order that has controlled world politics since the time of the Crusades, then it's very important that people know about this order, and I've realised that really they are the ones at the top, the Knights Templar. They really changed their name, from, say, Templars to Alumbrados to the Jesuits to the Illuminati. Same organisation, the Knights Templar. So what I'm going to do in this video is to go back into history and go back into the very foundation of the Knights Templar. Now, to do that, we have to understand the period in history in which the Templars were created. There were various armies that existed, obviously, and they would fight each other, and they were, knights, and they were really existent during the time of the European feudal historic period. They were men of skilled combat. This is before the creation of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, or Knights Hospitaller, or the Knights Templar. These were essentially mercenaries in the armies of kings. These were the first knights. These were noblemen, and they were distinguished for their courage in battle, and then they were gifted with lands and titles, and the vast majority of them became very powerful, nobility bloodlines with various tracts of land for their allegiance to the kings, and they were called under the king's orders, and that's where the term comes from. Order of knighthood. That's where the term came from. And these knights were extremely loyal to their masters. Now let's go into the creation of the Knights of St. John of the Templars. Now we enter the time in history which is the power of the Church of Rome. During this period, the Pope of Rome preached his crusades, also by Peter the Hermit. The Vatican at this time in history had the highest position of power. The highest position, and over kings, over princes, over all the noble bloodlines, they all bowed to the Pope in Rome, because the Pope had power over their immortal soul. If they defied the Pope, they would be excommunicated and would not go to heaven. So the Pope of Rome had political power, but he also had spiritual power. Ultimately, the Vatican was on top. It had power over the earth at this period in time, and was a separate sovereign power unto itself. It answered to no civil authority and no king. In fact, the Pope could not be questioned. He was the Vicar of Christ. And we also have, during this period, we have different monastic orders. That was the real time of the rise of these religious houses, or otherwise known as communes, or, monasteries. Sorry. And they were formed under papal orders, and they too became known as orders, just like the civil military counterparts, the Benedictines, the Franciscans, Dominicans, Cistercians, and Jesuits, who were later created after the Templars. It was actually the Benedictines that gave rise to the Templars, but also the Cistercians under the former Benedictine St. Bernard was instrumental in supporting and giving rise to the Templars as a monastic order. And during this period in time, the Church of Rome, really sent out their priests and monks from their religious houses to stir up the people, really, to stir them up with their, papal zeal to invade the Holy Land, because the Holy Land itself was held in Muslim hands. Often becoming a target, of their fiery preaching. Now, even though this was the truth, the fact is Islam was a sword of the church, but the Vatican lost control of Islam completely. Islam was just merely a warring religion created by the Pope to exterminate Jews and Protestants, really. I mean, that was the agenda, and obviously to take the Holy Land. But Islam betrayed the Vatican. Islam turned on the papacy and would not hand over the Christian pilgrim sites. But there was also thousands of pilgrims from Europe that were actually traveling along the journeys, the pilgrim journeys, and they were attacked by bands of Islamic, armies, really. And so that was the reason for the Crusades, was because the pilgrims were being attacked by the Muslims. And consequently, the popes and their high church officials during this period, put pressure on the kings and the noble bloodlines to send their well-trained armies of knights to fight and take over the Holy Land. And Jerusalem itself was finally captured after the First Crusade in AD 1099. And this was the reason for the creation of the Vatican knighthoods, the two of them, which are the most powerful today, which is the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem and the Knights Templar. They really modelled their order after the orders of knighthood, both military and ecclesiastical, that served the European monarchies for hundreds of years. So we had different knighthoods that were serving the monarchies. They were really knights of that realm. But with the creation of the Christian Crusades in the Holy Land, we had the Vatican orders created. And the three largest ecclesiastical Catholic orders of the Crusades were first the Order of the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, known as the Knights Templar, or sometimes controversially referred to as simply the Temple. I say controversial because the Templars, before they were destroyed, they had areas in Paris and London and, all over Europe really, which was their, headquarters, and it was called the Temple. And it is well known that all of the kings in Europe were really in debt to the Templars. They had to go to the temple to borrow money and send their agents to really, pay off that debt. They really couldn't go to war except by the money of the Templars. And we know the Templars created the banking system. They created the banknote, the IOU as it is. It's just a worthless banknote. We know that today. But really it was given to the pilgrims because they couldn't carry gold or silver or any, coin or any currency because they'd be robbed by the Muslims and so on. So the Templars really created that system, that banking system, whereby people could give an IOU and they would take that with them and on their journey. And, if someone stole that, what have they got? A worthless piece of paper? Which is what all banknotes are today anyway. So when they actually reached Jerusalem, they would hand that to the Templars, and the Templars would obviously confirm who they are and, give them their wealth, So that was why they set up the banking system. But what it became through the temple was a complete domination of the kings of Europe. Literally, they controlled the whole banking system. In fact, they pioneered and they created the very banking system. At that time, there was no banking system, as in, interlocking system. It didn't exist. So the Templars created the structure throughout Europe. And they were quartered in the remains of King Solomon's temple in the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. So their actual headquarters was the Temple Mount, beneath King Solomon's temple. That was their territory, the Knights Templar. That's why we see in Freemasonry, of course, the highest degree is the Knights Templar degree. And at the heart of Masonry, you see they want to build again Solomon's temple. And that is ultimately the agenda, is for the Templars to go back to Jerusalem. But obviously they opened it up through the crown and brought the Jews back, and they are the ones overseeing all of this agitation and chaos. It's all ordered chaos. Ultimately the Pope of Rome will come and bring his peace, but the Templars are the ones behind the Vatican. They're behind the monarchies today, and they really punished the Vatican, and they really took revenge on the kings of Europe for destroying them. It wasn't just a suppression. For instance, if you look at the Society of Jesus, they were suppressed by Pope Clement in 1773. But they were not butchered, they were not burned at the stake, they were not tortured for weeks and weeks to confess, But the Templars were, and they took revenge. They really did. Okay, I'm moving into that many different areas, but I think that's the good thing as well, just to cover a lot of ground. I'm going to bring a lot of videos on the Templars and on this conspiracy. I've been spending a lot of time, the last couple of weeks going into this, so I'm going to bring this out. So, okay, next we have the Knights Hospitaller. They are the Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem, Palestine, Rhodes and Malta. Referred to as, literally, at that time in history, the First Crusade, known as the Hospital. So, Knights of the Hospitaller. And today they're entitled the Hospitaller Order of St. John. And there are various branches. One of them is obviously the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. That's exclusively Roman Catholic, because there is what's called ecumenical branches or Protestant branches, but believe me, they're all under the power of the Knights of Malta, ruled by the Grand Master, who is under the power of the Templars today. Also we have the Teutonic Knights of St. Mary the Blessed Virgin, originating in and composed predominantly of Germanic knights, and the remnants of that were obviously the Nazis, of course, you know, and Himmler, you know, who was building his round table for his Teutonic SS knights, of course controlled by the Jesuit provincials, always, you know. And so that's really the foundation of this time in history, really, and these orders. And but let me just say, even today, there exist many orders, you know, because I explained that before the Knights of St. John, or the Knights of Malta as they're called, or before the creation of the Templars, they were European knighthoods existing in Europe. You know, long before the Vatican had their Vatican knighthoods. For instance, you have military orders of chivalry from the British Isles. Some of those still exist today, known as the Order of the Bath. Under the British Crown, you have Order of the Garter, the Order of St. Michael and St. George, the Order of the Thistle. Obviously, the Thistle is a Scottish order. And many military and civil knighthoods, which are granted by the existing monarchies of countries with that type of government. And these are really, you know, different awards and orders that are given. You have the Order of the British Empire, given by the Queen, which is a military and civil award. You have the Victoria Cross of Great Britain up and through World War II, the Knight's Cross. You have the Iron Cross of Germany, and the Iron Cross is really just another Templar symbol. That's the truth. Which was fashioned after the Teutonic Knight's Cross. Actually, it was also used by the Templars for their crusades. That's the Iron Cross. And so people have to understand, you know, that there is, you know, knighthood orders today under the power of the monarchies, but the most powerful are the ones that are under the power of not the Pope, but the power of the Grand Master of the Knights of the Templars, you know. The Order of Knights Templar exists today under the name of Jesuits. That's their front organisation. Before that they were the Alumbrados, and before that they were the Knights Templar. So the Knights Templar eventually took revenge, and, you know, their areas where they were strong was, after the suppression, they went underground and really, you know, were strong in France and Scotland. And they began to rise into what they are today, a worldwide order. And they also work with the Knights of Malta today, because the Knights of Malta really received their wealth and the majority of the lands, and gave it back to the Templars, of course. So there is this rivalry in history between the Order of St. John and the Templars, but obviously today they work together. And the Order of the Knights Templar, just to give some information, the order dates from 1118 AD, and the early time period of the second of the Great Christian Crusades in the Holy Land. The order grew from a small original group of 9 knights to become the first and largest of the major military orders. And exactly like the Jesuits, I'll finish with this, if you look at the Jesuit order, they are identical to the Order of the Knights Templar. The Templars were created as Knights of the Virgin. Exactly the same with the Jesuits, they were created as Knights of the Virgin. They were suppressed by the Pope, punished by the monarchies, exactly like the Jesuits. The Knights Templars and the Jesuits are the same order. And this is known by the kings and the monarchies, of course, at the highest levels. Okay, I'll continue in my next video. My name is Alan Lamont. Thank you for listening, and as always, all roads lead to Rome.